Today, I'm excited to share my interview with Dave Kennett, the founder and CEO of ReplayzIQ, a revolutionary AI-powered sales coaching platform that's transforming how teams approach coaching and enablement by scaling AI call reviews and feedback. This podcast is sponsored by the GTM AI Academy, your go-to resource for learning how to leverage AI in go-to-market teams and individual roles. You can find this episode on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, YouTube, LinkedIn, and more. Let's get to it. Welcome back, everybody. I am really stoked to have my guy here, Dave. I've been following him on LinkedIn, and he so kindly, I reached out to him and said, hey, I got to have you on because he is in charge of replays, which I've been geeking out on all your updates and stuff on LinkedIn. I love the focus of what you guys are trying to do. So I appreciate you taking the time, and we're going to dive in. But before we do, I know I've talked about you a little bit on the podcast already as an intro, but I'd love to hear more about you on a personal level of your background, why you're doing replays, and what's happening right now.
Yeah, thanks, Jonathan. Stoked to be here. Really appreciate you reaching out. Yeah, I mean, my background is I've been in sales since I started my career. And so a number of years now, and sales leadership for a good part of that, and tech for a significant part of that. And, you know, I'd say a healthy balance between large organizations and small organizations, right? So large organizations like AutoTrader, where I helped bring them from print to digital back in the sort of 2009 to 2012-ish. And then large organizations as well that were not tech related, like W.W. Grainger, $5 billion company, or sorry, way more than that. That was, and that's an organization where I really think I got the formal sales chops way back in the day. And so to fast forward to today, to answer your question of like, so how do we get here? Yeah, it's really around, as a tech sales leader, I just got tired of the fact that I cared deeply about coaching and building a coaching culture. And I simply wouldn't have gotten a good grade for it by my team, by the CEO of the companies I worked with, because it's like, I just didn't have time to implement what I wanted to implement. I didn't get a failing grade either, I don't think, but it's like, who has time to properly review calls at scale for your team? Like, you want to review 1 or 2 calls per week per rep. What amount of time does that take? And if you've got 8 to 10 reps, I mean, it's just unmanageable. And the tech out there that exists is cool, but it's largely call recording tools. So yeah, that's how we stood up Replays.
Well, I I did a course for the SEC on sales coaching. This is a topic very near and dear to my heart. So I'm gonna tap into this. Let's talk more about the problem first and then why you did replays. So right now, real time, you have a tool like Gong, Chorus, SalesLoft, whoever. You have this collection of calls, and you know the pain as well as I do of trying to grade those, but it's really not a good view of how someone performs in every single call, right? So what do you think the real problem is? Is it just the scale of it, or what do you think gets in most people's way between creating that culture and then actually executing on that coaching?
I think it's one of two things or both, depending on the leader and the company. The one main one that's a common thread we see after coaching, like we started out as a coaching company 5 years ago and just had humans doing this. And then we've now just turned it into an amazing scalable SaaS product. And the two problems we see, number one is time. It's like, who has the time? The second is, okay, you might have time to review calls, not as many as you'd like per rep, but maybe you're a first-time manager, you don't have the confidence. Maybe you've been a manager for 10 years and you don't have the confidence to be a great sales call coach because you haven't been trained. And like, hey, I wasn't comfortable doing it when I first started, right? I had to be trained. So I think what's holding back people is, number one, yes, there's tech out there that exists that bills itself as a coaching tool. But to me, it's more a call recording tool, is what I see for a number of like the main companies out there that companies use as their quote unquote coaching tool. I think they're call recording tools. And I think that's a problem, is that regardless of what tool you're using, you mentioned a bunch of them a minute ago, you still have to coach the call, right? Like we've had over 60 customers, like these are top tier software organizations from companies like Outreach and Vidyard and Clue and MindTickle, right up to IBM, where they chose Replays to help with their process. And we got to learn a lot from the GTM leaders about what they loved about their tech stack and what they hated. And then I'm like, I just kept thinking companies like Gong and Zoom Info, who, by the way, we love, great companies, great organizations, love the people. I thought they would solve the problem of, hey, like, I just want to click a button and see how my sales reps did today. It doesn't exist. And I
Yeah.
thought, I just like, you know what? Let's just build this damn thing. I'm getting tired of,
Yeah.
yeah, let's just build it. Exactly.
So now I'd love to know more about, so what it does is can it integrate with the Gong, or is it its own thing that takes over like a Gong thing, or how does it work?
We've got a couple different products, but the main enterprise product integrates with your call recording tool, and it pulls in your calls, anonymizes them, puts them through our large language model, which anonymizes everything and then evaluates it. That's how it
Yeah.
works.
And I'm going to ask you a little nerdy AI question. Is it your own model, or is it like an open AI, like a playground type thing?
We have our own model. Yeah. So
Awesome.
I think that's the thing that differentiates us, right? If you were
Yeah.
to ask why companies haven't rolled something like this out yet, it's because it's way harder tech than people think. And I found that out the hard
Yeah.
way when we went to build it. And it's because if you get an amazing AI team, which thankfully we have a bunch of awesome PhDs working with us to build this product, and you have an amazing dev team, and you say, hey, please solve this problem. The problem being, we want a tool that can accurately score an SMB call, mid-market call, an enterprise call, want it to
Right.
delineate between outbound generated lead versus inbound generated lead. We want it to pick up on the nuance of the specific persona that you're selling into. That gets pretty complicated very quickly when you just
Yeah.
try and use an open AI. As we both know, it's not trained in the context deeply of sales calls. It can tell you in general if something was done okay, but it's not going to tell you if second level pain was uncovered as a 3 out of 4 versus 1 out of 4 outbound generated first 5-minute call, right? So that's where you look at what we brought to the table. We had 24 amazing sales coaches coaching these fantastic companies and sales reps. And we've got this like hundreds of hours of recorded data
Mhm.
that's now labeled data that has informed our models. That's the moat. That's the reason that companies haven't rolled out replay. You'll see companies out there that score calls,
Yeah.
and you'll see that when you check the accuracy, it's just not quite there to really productize it at scale. Ours is, and that's why.
I think that's something that I hear a lot just about AI in general, is just the trust. Like, how can I trust that this is going to actually give me something actionable, or how can I trust the score it gives me? It's just not some random score,
Yeah.
which I think is important to understand, is that what you're talking about is the reason why you can, is because the data that's been trained on is customized to whatever you might be going through, versus just an open bajillion parameter thing from OpenAI that could be anything that can be
Yeah.
trained on.
Well,
So
I think there's a couple things there, right? To unpack. One is, do you trust it to be accurate? And that's something like, imagine if you and I, and think of the like 3 or 4 people out there you respect the most as sales leaders and sales enablement leaders.
right.
And what I did is I went out and picked the ones that I respect the most. And we sat next to, we raised a couple $1 million, and we sat next to PhDs for the last year and a half. And we
Right.
defined painstakingly what 100 out of 100 versus 75 out of 100 versus 50 versus 25 is on every single sales skill, over 150 sales skills. And so I think to build trust in whatever you're using for AI, whether it be call recording tools or coaching tools or writing email scripts, you want to make sure that it's accurate. And that's where it becomes very obvious very quickly for our customers that it's accurate. And even through the buying cycle, we can prove that. But and on top of the fact that we've got raving fans out there who have had just crazy improvements in win rate. But then I think the second thing is it actually providing value, right? Like,
Right.
so just because something is correct doesn't mean it's actually going to change my life in a meaningful way with
Right.
to improvement. And so those are the two things we've really thought deeply about. And don't get me wrong, I'm not preaching. Like, I'm sitting here saying, like, we hit our head against a wall, man, for like lots and lots of times where we're like, we would bring this to a customer and we'd say, what do you think? And they'd say, not quite yet, do this. And we'd be like,
You're
why?
right.
And they'd tell us. And now, so like, I'm not saying we got it all figured out, but we do not. But thankfully, the one thing we do, according to our customers, quite well is they trust the results and it brings them value.
So coming from a coaching perspective, I'm curious, have you found, like you talked about 150 skills, like I think about in the competency model and personas and then product knowledge and the sales stage and the scenario and the title and all this, like it get complicated really quick.
Yeah.
Have you found things? I'm just curious of like, we have all the coaching methodologies we have out there now of what you should do or what you should look at or metrics you should be analyzing. Do you feel like you have uncovered, I don't know if skills is the right word, but patterns or things that you, even as a sales leader, have thought, I never thought about this until I have all this data pointing me towards this that I need to start looking at. You've seen anything like that?
Yeah, we have. And when I answer this, your audience is going to think that was a leading question because you knew the answer.
Yeah,
But
I'm not. I'm legit asking.
I know
Yeah,
we can both agree you don't know the answer, right? I've never
I
been to
don't.
a demo. And so that was one of the things where we hit our head against the wall. I thought, hey, if we go out and build a call scoring tool that's more accurate than humans, by the way, now it's actually 5 times more accurate than humans. We measure it
Yeah.
through mean absolute error. And I thought if we go build this, then that should be enough. Like imagine if you could just push a button and score calls. But what we found is that wasn't enough. Our customer wanted to be served up the game plan, the coaching playbook, the roadmap, the what should I train my team on in the next handful of weeks? And so we're like, okay, how do we tackle that? And this is where the surprise came for me. How we tackled that is we started doing sales stage analysis by cohort. You look at the average go-to-market leader. I'm sure you've seen this a lot in your career. It's like, yeah, we see a lot of leakage between stage 1 and 2. Let's call it initial call to maybe your initial call is discovery and the next one's demo. And then you also see high variability between your top reps and your bottom reps. Let's say they're converting stage 1 to 2, your top reps at 30% and your bottom reps at 10%. So that's a problem. And the question is like, why is that? Well, how do you diagnose that today? I mean, it's tough. You go in and look at a bunch of calls and you talk. So what we did is we built a crucial skills algorithm. And this was tough, man. Like this, not like, so we analyzed a cohort of calls that moved forward to the next stage from stage 1 to 2 that were successful and then ended up closing. We score those, and then ReplayzIQ scores the calls in cohort B where the calls were not successful from stage 1. It was, and then we also have to parse out the ones that were never going to be a fit, but they're the ones where, yeah, on any given day, if you had a better, like the sales rep was just more on their game that day. We all have good days. Goodness knows I have lots of bad days in sales. And then the algorithm says, these are the 10 skills that you should coach on in the next 8 weeks. And every single time ReplayzIQ delivers that for a customer, it's a surprise to them. And it's a surprise to me because I would expect to see the things that you and I might think like, hey, you need to be really better at more of a customizing your demo to the discovery you just found out. Right.
Active listening or better questions or.
Right. And every time it's different things because it's based on that data of that customer. And we had one customer who found that we always ask them before they get the results, like, hey, what do you think ReplayzIQ's crucial skill algorithm is going to, say that the top 10 things are? And every single time they're wrong. I would be wrong too, right? And
that's really funny.
Yeah. So I think one of the surprises has been that we think we know what the problem is. And it's not just like, let's say you go and score. And this part I found really fascinating as well. I had a really fascinating conversation with an enablement leader about a year and a half ago. And it was really informed a lot of my thinking and got me going down a certain path. They reviewed like over 1,000 calls in a year. And when you think about it, that's like, they must have been doing that almost full time. And I said, what did you do with that? They said, we built a certification program. Great. How did you determine what you needed to certify? And they said, well, we just picked the things first that the reps scored the lowest on. And of course, that's a very logical way to do it. I would do it that way too. But the question we have to ask ourselves, now that we've got amazing technology out there to analyze calls like ReplayzIQ, we can actually know empirically if those skills are the right skills to score our team on. Just because our reps might be the worst at doing an agenda, it doesn't necessarily mean that's the thing you should train them on tomorrow. So that's been the surprise, I think, to me.
I've been thinking about this a lot actually through my coaching careers, that I used to do the lowest common denominator as well. But then I started thinking, wait a second, is this skill actually the one that makes the difference with average sale price, with win ratio, with revenue, like all that stuff? Is that the actual skill? And if it is that the most important, like that alone from a subjective point of view is really freaking hard to understand because you're like, I don't know, maybe it is a gen I need to work on. But having more of that data point, I think is extremely powerful because it takes away the just the subjectivity. I heard this random story from a guy who's a psychologist who started using ChatGPT as like a sidekick. He'd record his calls in person, then have it review it based on a prompt he had. And the article is basically him saying, I think that anyone who does not use AI in their process should be sued for malpractice because he's like, I missed so much stuff. And I'm an expert psychologist who spent years doing counseling. So I think about that with this. Like, it's like we all have blind spots. I have strengths in my own coaching background. I can pinpoint things like crazy, but there's some things I'm like, I miss. And having an AI tool to do that, I think is super powerful. So
Yeah, agreed, 100%.
question for you, and this is actually going to call you out because we were talking about this before, how you want to have like a human versus AI thing. I remember a post by Corey Bray. I don't know if you've talked to him yet or not, but
We, yeah, he's great. I haven't chatted with him in a while, but
yeah,
yeah,
he literally posts about the same thing of like, I wonder what a human versus AI would do as far as call coaching would be concerned. So when you brought that up, I was like, I gotta tag Corey Bray in this to make sure he knows to come talk to you and do a test with him versus the tech, which would be cool.
I'd love to do that. And
Yeah,
we're actually going to be rolling that out in the coming weeks. Where you've got customers who are big believers, and they're saying, I said, how do you think we can make believers out of the market? And they're like, tell you what, why don't we go on some webinars, some podcasts, and we'll do human versus AI. So actually, Mark Cosgrove came up with that idea. And we're going to be doing a bit of a roadshow coming up here with Kyle Norton, Mark Cosgrove, and it's them versus ReplayzIQ. We're picking a disco demo, and we're
that's awesome.
it in front of a live audience, and let's see who does better. Let's let the audience decide. Is it ReplayzIQ that did the better job at coaching, or is it the human?
So I'm going to pack that a little bit. So they're basically going to review a call beforehand and then come with their suggestions of what you should do. Is that what they're
Yeah.
doing?
And we're going to play a bit of it live
Awesome.
to the audience as well. So we've got the permission of the rep and the permission of the prospect.
Oh, I love it. I love that. I was actually thinking of doing something similar. Like, I know yours is in this tool. I was thinking of doing like an AI role play death battle because there's so many AI role play things out there.
Yeah.
So I
Yeah.
was thinking about doing one, but I love that thought because
Yeah.
both the guys you picked would be phenomenal to do it with.
Yeah.
Question more. Actually, I'm gonna ask you one more question about replays. Do you see yourself going into a place where you're going to be offering other products besides scoring, like an AI role play, or are you going to really just double down on analysis and suggestions on what they should be doing or changing?
Oh, our roadmap is so exciting. I
Yeah.
believe we'll be the first to have, like, okay, so many times we've reviewed calls. We've reviewed, our team and our product has reviewed thousands of calls.
Hmm.
And the problem we keep hearing about is sales reps relying on solutions consultants too much. And what we both know that the solution consultants are so valuable, so amazing, but
Right.
you can't scale them. There's usually one per
Right.
ratio of how many people. And
Yeah.
so we want to start there. We're going to have a solution consultant bot that joins the call and
Cool.
supports sales rep. Yeah. And I believe we'll be one of the first to have an accurate AI sales rep. And trust me, we do not want to replace salespeople at scale. What we want to do is support sales organizations where there are certain tasks within the sales process, maybe a more transactional, like smaller dollar, where actually cost of acquisition doesn't make sense to have a human on there or what have you.
Right.
That's where we're going to be starting with it. And then I think the other thing I want to mention is I just think there's too many tools out there for sales leaders and not enough for sales reps. And
Yeah.
I sell every day, right? Like every single day, and I love it. And I'm like looking at there. Don't get me wrong, there's great tech out there to support sales reps, but
Yeah.
often it seems like if I'm a sales rep, there could be things that support, like for everything that's out there that can support a sales leader, the ratio is not in the favors of the sales rep. It's more the, hey, how can I analyze what's going on with my sales rep, as opposed to, I'm a sales rep, I click a button, this thing helps me get better when it comes to sales calls. So we're rolling out a product where, and maybe can I just share a quick story on something
Please.
that,
Please.
all right. So 2 weeks ago, a lead came in, and it was a director of sales at a really neat SaaS organization that we've probably all heard of, but I won't name the name here. And they wanted a demo. So I jump on with him. He goes, oh, actually, our chief revenue officer and our CMO recommended you guys. I'm like, oh, that's
Yeah.
great. Fantastic. And then I looked, and it turns out one of them's an investor, an early
Oh,
investor.
nice.
Yeah. So it's like, leads don't come in hotter and more warm than that, right? So call goes really well. I felt like hour and a half sort of disco demo. And he's like, you know what, Dave, like, I think we got the budget for this. Let's just make this happen. We just need our sales enablement leader to really buy in here. So I'm going to set you up with that person. So I jump on the call with the sales enablement leader, and she, at the end of the call, I said, so what do you think? She said, it seems like more of a Q3 or Q4 thing. I go, oh, and this was like 2 weeks ago, right? I'm like, okay, well, can we unpack that? And we unpacked it a little, and she just was not bought in. And I scratched my head after that call. I'm like, what happened there? Right? It's like, I, and I thought about it for about 15 minutes, like, I don't know, 10, 15 minutes. And like, okay, I think I know what happened here. I did your classic sort of feature dump, and I was talking about all the things. They just rolled out a new sales process, and all she wanted was something that would score the new sales process, which is an important part of what we do, but it's 1/10 of what we do.
Right.
And I spent 1/10 of the conversation on that thing when I should have spent 90% of the conversation. So I sent this to a couple of our coaches, and I said, hey, would you mind reviewing this and tell me what you think? And I also put it through ReplayzIQ. And ReplayzIQ hit me over the head and said, like, hey, sales rep Dave, this is exactly what you should have done. And it said the exact same thing that my two colleagues said, the exact same thing that I thought, which was go right back to that customer right now, that prospect, apologize for, like, not, maybe not apologize, but make it clear that you realize that you could have gone deeper on the things that she cared about, and see if you can save this deal. And so I've sent that email, and we'll see where things go. But we had a customer recently say, Dave, I'm a sales leader who gets pinged maybe once a week from a sales rep saying, this call took a left turn and I don't know why. Can you like send through, can you have a look at this link? And sales leaders just don't have time. So we're creating a really exciting product that we're rolling out in the next couple of weeks here. It'll already be in market when this drops, for sales reps, where if they something took a left turn and they don't know why, it has nothing to do with their company. They upload it, they pay blah, whatever the price is going to be, and they get the analysis that I got when I was on that call. So that's another product that we're excited about.
I think one thing if I've done more with AI that I think people don't put into context is that getting coached, like a good coach does a really good job of creating that psychological safety and building that trust and getting feedback. But not everyone is really good at that. So like when they get coached by some sales leaders, it's intimidating to go to your CRO and be like, hey, I sucked. Can you tell me I did better? Because like, I don't want to get fired. There's a lot of power behind having a robot do it for you because it's not intimidating. I don't get emotional about AI telling me I sucked on something. Like, yeah, you're right. I sucked on that. So I think that's something to take consideration too, is just that factor.
100%. We see that there's this level of anonymity that makes, I think, people feel a little bit more comfortable. And let's hope you're in the right culture at your organization, if you're a rep listening, where your CRO is going to be cool listening to something. But let's face it, a lot of them aren't. It is threatening, and it is like not something you might feel comfortable doing. So I think that is an important aspect of this thing. And so yeah, that is one of those things. I think sales reps deserve more support out there. And this is one easy and quick way to do that.
Well, I love it. I might have to wrap up with one more question, but before I do, we have the new product coming out so you can analyze your calls, which is awesome. The human versus AI series, which you're going to have, which I'm actually really excited for. I'm totally going to tune in, and I'm really excited for all the other stuff you have coming on down the pipe. One last question, which is for those people who may have, and this is a biased question because you're leading an AI company, but for those who may feel like the AI is cheating or can't trust them, or they're just like, I'm not sure if I'm okay to trust my entire Salesforce with an AI review system or a coaching system. What I always try to push people to think differently. Like, how would you say to them, like, what would you say to consider another point of view of using AI or your tool to make things happen better for them?
Well, I think a healthy level of distrust is really good. I think it's healthy, and I encourage everyone to continue that. I think, and the reason is, if you got to know where you're putting your data out there, and you have to know whether it's safe. So that's number one, right? It's when you look at the security protocols we've had to go through at ReplayzIQ to ensure that we can give that safety of the data. So that's number one, know where your data is going. Number two, I think it's I mean, let's face it, it is cheating sometimes if it's to do with use cases in school and that kind of thing. But in what you and I are talking about, it's really not in a go-to-market application. So where I would encourage people to use it, I'd say there's a lot of products out there that just run things through GPT. And you and I know that. And that's not often that helpful. It's also often not that accurate. Like that product I was just talking about, if a sales rep were to run that their call through it and ask questions versus our large language model that's had thousands of calls in there, you're just going to get a million times, and that's a very empirical, accurate number, by the way, a million times
Right. A million
more
times.
accurate, data. But then, so I think the other thing is like A/B test, right? So once you trust the tech, the next thing you need to do is know if it's accurate, know if it's been trained on the right data that has deep context in the subject matter that you're looking at, whether it be email creation or whether it be in conversational intelligence. And then I think test it. Don't believe, test it, and do A/B tests. Use your old system for blah, whatever it is that you're using it for. Use the AI system, see which one's better, and don't expect perfection. Humans aren't perfect. Machines aren't perfect. The companies that are rolling out solid, sturdy AI, it's gotten to a place, I don't think people have business rolling it out unless it's better than humans. Ours is 5 times more accurate than humans. Is it still perfect? No. So I would watch for people who say it's perfect.
Right. Thank you for being okay to say it's okay to not be trusting. Because I think it's important to be, now more than ever, especially with AI, critical thinking and creative thinking, those two together are like critical components of being okay with it. Appreciate you so much, Dave. Like, you've been phenomenal guest. Love it. I'm genuinely excited. And to those listening, we didn't prep any of these questions. Like, this is just my enablement geek brain asking questions. So I'm loving it. But thank you for taking the time. I'm super excited for the series. And yeah, just appreciate it. Oh, website. What's your website?
ReplayzIQ.com.
Awesome. I'll make sure I'll have it in the show notes for everyone as well. But Dave, thank you. Been a pleasure.
Thanks, Jonathan. It was great being here. I enjoyed the conversation.
Thanks, man.
Thanks for listening to the GTM AI podcast. Please follow, subscribe, like, comment, and come back for more.